Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into quite a fascinating puzzle today. Two iconic Korean martial arts.
That's right. We've got a really solid stack of sources here. Historical records, technical analyses, expert opinions.
All focusing on Taekgyeon and Taekwondo.
And our mission really is to unpack the relationship between them. They sound so similar, but are they truly connected? Or did Taekwondo maybe borrow the name?
Borrow the name of its much older relative for perhaps strategic reasons. We're aiming to settle that debate about influence, about the technical DNA.
It's a huge contrast when you look at them side by side.
It really is. You've got Taekgyeon ancient, recognized by UNESCO as cultural heritage, often described, believe it or not, as a folk dance.
And then there's Taekwondo, modern, global, and Olympic sport. What is it, 80 million practitioners worldwide, something like that?
It's this difference between, a kind of delicate village tradition and this huge modern athletic machine.
It's a brilliant case study in how culture evolves, how national identity plays a role. So to really get it, we need to start way back.
Okay, let's start with the older one, Taekgyeon.
Right. Let's dig into its deep history first.
So, where do the sources take us? I'm seeing pointers to similar hand-to-hand stuff way back in the Goguryeo Kingdom, 3rd, 4th century.
That's the early indication, yes. Under names like Subak or Subakwi, it was particularly prominent, it seems, during the Goryeo dynasty.
So it had practical uses back then.
Oh, definitely. Initially, it was quite practical. We see it used in military training, even in recruitment tests during the early Joseon period.
Oh, yeah.
But here's what's really interesting. It didn't stay locked up with the military or the elite. From the mid-Joseon era onwards, it kind of spread out.
Became more democratic.
Exactly. It shifted from purely military stuff to become a popular, common folk game, something ordinary people did in villages.
Right, so it woven into everyday life, festivals, that kind of thing.
Precisely. But then, things took a dark turn with the Japanese colonial occupation, 1910 to 1945.
Yes, the suppression of Korean culture.
Right. And that meant many traditional practices, Taekgyeon included, were banned or heavily discouraged. It nearly died out.
But it didn't completely disappear.
No, amazingly it survived, but only in secret, really. Kept alive by just a few dedicated masters.
Like Songdeokgi, he comes up a lot in the sources.
He's absolutely central. He kept the flame alive during that difficult time and right after, and then he started systematically teaching it again, reconstructing it in the late 50s.
And his student, Shin Han-sung, carried that on into the 70s.
That's right. It was a real concerted effort to revive it. Painful, but ultimately successful.
And that success led to major recognition, didn't it? By 1983, the South Korean government stepped in.
Yes, designating it National Intangible Cultural Heritage number 76. A huge step.
But then came the really big one, globally speaking.
Absolutely. The UNESCO recognition in 2011, that was the mic drop moment. Taekwondo became the world's first martial art listed as intangible cultural heritage.
Which really cements its status as a living tradition, not just, a historical fighting style.
Exactly. It's priceless.
Okay, let's circle back to that description that always throws me. Folk dance. How does a martial art, used for military tests even, get called a dance?
It's about the movement and also the context. Historically, Taekgyeon wasn't just practiced in a dojo, it was a community thing.
Right, you mentioned festivals earlier.
Yes, performed publicly, sometimes with drums, crowds watching, like the Kyulian Taekgyeon at the Tano Festival. And the movements themselves, UNESCO even calls them fluid, rhythmic, dance-like.
When I think martial arts, I usually picture something, stiff, linear.
Taekgyeon is kind of the opposite. The basic footwork, it's called pumbalki or ojimjil. It's this constant, soft, triangular stepping pattern.
So always moving.
Always moving. Rocking, swaying, shifting weight. Knees are bent, the body's loose, flexible. You're almost bobbing and weaving around your opponent. It looks like dancing right up until the attack comes.
But how does that fit with the philosophy? The sources talk about harmony and mutual prosperity. How is that a fighting art? Surely combat means hurting someone.
But that's the core difference, isn't it? In Taekgyeon, true mastery isn't about brutality. It's about control.
Control.
Yes, achieving dominance or making the opponent yield without causing serious injury. Knocking them down with a sweep, a clean kick, yes. But the intent isn't to maim.
So it really tries to embody that idea of live and thrive together, even in a fight.
That's the ideal, yes. A very different mindset.
Worlds away from the kind of aggressive point scoring you see in modern Taekwondo. Okay, let's shift gears then. Fast forward quite a bit, post-war Korea. How did Taekwondo emerge?
Right, so now we're in the mid-20th century, a really volatile time just after liberation in 45 and then the Korean War. And this is where Taekwondo's origin story gets, well, complicated
Oh.
and political.
Okay. What's the first key thing we need to grasp?
We have to look at what the first generation of founders were actually teaching right after the war ended. When martial arts schools, the Kwans, started opening up again.
What were they teaching? Was it in ancient Korean art?
Well, no. Most of the key figures, the leaders of these early Kwans, had received their formal martial arts training during the Japanese occupation.
Meaning they learned Japanese arts.
Predominantly, yes. Specifically things like Shotokan karate. So the systems they initially taught were often called Tangsudo or Kongsudo.
Which, if you translate them,
It's basically the Korean way of saying karate-do or empty hand way. The techniques, the fixed stances, linear blocks, the structured forms or patterns, they were fundamentally from that Japanese karate model.
that's quite a revelation for anyone holding on to the idea that Taekwondo is this purely indigenous, ancient Korean art form.
It's a critical point. But then, how did we get the name Taekwondo? Because that sounds Korean.
Exactly. How did that happen?
Okay, here's where the story takes a really interesting, almost accidental turn. It's 1952, middle of the Korean War. President Syngman Rhee is watching a martial arts demonstration by the military.
A demonstration of these karate-based techniques, right? Chan Sudo.
Precisely. But Rhee didn't call it that. Maybe he genuinely mistook it for something older. Maybe he was just eager for a Korean name. But he enthusiastically referred to the techniques he saw as Taekgyeon.
Wait a minute. He called the karate-based stuff Taekgyeon, the ancient folk art.
He did, just like that. A misidentification, perhaps, but from the president.
So this whole global art, the name at least, might hinge on one mistaken word.
It seems like an incredible historical accident, doesn't it? But it had immediate consequences. That comment fueled the push to unify all these different Kwans, these schools teaching karate-based systems, under one single Korean banner.
Ah, the political pressure.
Right. So, in 1955, a committee gets together, and they choose the name Taekwondo, way of the foot and fist.
Which sounds very similar to Taekyon.
Deliberately so. It was a strategic move. It gave the new synthesized art instant Korean legitimacy and helped distance it, at least in name, from its very obvious roots in Japanese karate.
A necessary move probably in post-war Korea, wanting to establish a strong national identity separate from Japan.
Absolutely. Taekwondo was forged in that crucible of nationalism. It was standardized, given the 5 tenets: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit, emphasizing discipline, national pride. And that standardization is a big part of why it spread so successfully worldwide.
Okay, let's get down to the nuts and bolts now. The techniques. This is where we should really see the difference, right? Soft flow versus hard lines.
Definitely. When you watch Taekwondo, the whole aesthetic is different. It's soft, it's circular, the knees are always bent, the body's loose, relaxed.
Generating power differently.
Yes, through continuous rhythmic flow, flexibility, using the whole body in a connected way.
So if I were to visualize it, Taekyon is like water, maybe.
Yeah.
Always moving, changing, finding openings. While Taekwondo is more like a hammer. Direct, powerful.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. Taekwondo techniques tend to be more grounded. Lots of low kicks, unexpected sweeps, that tangic technique to take out the legs, and using open hands to grab, pull, unbalance.
High kicks, the spectacular stuff.
Historically, very rare in Taekwondo. It wasn't the focus.
Okay, now flip that. Taekwondo.
Taekwondo, especially in its traditional forms, the pumse, is much harder, more linear, fixed stances. The emphasis is on explosive, direct power. Think breaking boards hitting targets hard.
Right.
And then you look at modern Taekwondo sparring, the Olympic style. The footwork is light, bouncy, yeah, but it's all geared towards setting up an explosive attack, usually forward or back.
And it's dominated by kicks, right?
Yeah.
Especially high kicks.
Completely. High roundhouses, spinning kicks, jumping kicks, those flashy, powerful techniques aimed high, that's what defines it globally in sport. Hand techniques are really minimal in scoring.
Just simple punches to the body protector, basically.
Right, and they score less. The intent in sparring reflects this difference, too.
How so?
In sport Taekwondo, how do you score? You knock your opponent down, sweep or throw, or you land a clean, controlled kick to the head. But there are strict rules against really hard fist strikes to the head. It aligns with that older philosophy of control, not causing unnecessary harm.
Okay, and Taekwondo competition.
It's almost entirely about scoring points by landing permitted techniques, primarily kicks, on legal targets, the body armor, the hogu, and the headgear. Kicking below the belt is forbidden. It's aggressive, it's athletic, focused on point-based dominance with speed and power.
They really are playing different games then, fundamentally.
Totally different games, different goals, different feels.
So this brings us to the conclusion, wrapping up the history. We have to tackle that debate head on. The 5,000-year-old indigenous roots claim for Taekwondo versus what some historians call the revisionist view, that it's mainly derived from karate.
Yeah, and when you look purely at the technical evidence, the movement, the structure, the weight falls pretty heavily towards the revisionist side.
Meaning the DNA is primarily karate.
The foundational DNA, yes. While Taekwondo absolutely evolved and developed its own unique Korean character, especially with the emphasis on kicking.
Which maybe drew inspiration from older Korean kicking games generally.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
But the initial structure, the kwans, the teaching methods, the early forms, they come directly from Japanese karate.
And the sources confirm this. Early manuals and things.
Yes, early Taekwondo manuals literally contained Japanese karate forms, sometimes just with Korean names swapped in. The linear movements, the belt grading system, it's all there.
So the Koreanization happened later,
Yeah.
emphasizing the high kicks, creating new forms.
Exactly. It was a deliberate process, particularly in the 60s and 70s, driven by that need for a distinct national martial art. Promoting the ancient narrative was part of building that national identity, especially standing apart from Japan.
Makes sense politically. Now, what about the Taekyon practitioners today? The masters keeping that tradition alive. Do they see a direct link? Do they claim Taekwondo as an offshoot?
Generally, no. Most Taekwondo masters today strongly reject a direct technical lineage. They'll point out, quite rightly, that the movements, the principles, the entire philosophy are fundamentally different.
So from their perspective, Taekwondo just borrowed the name.
Essentially, yes. Borrowed the name for legitimacy and national identity, but not the actual physical art form, not the flowing, soft movements of Taekwondo.
Okay, so the conclusion seems clear. These two arts, despite the similar sounding names, are really on parallel tracks today.
I think that's the best way to put it. Both incredibly important to Korean culture, but in very different ways.
Taekyon is the cultural treasure, that living heritage, the art of harmony and flow rooted deep in folk tradition.
And Taekwondo is the global athletic phenomenon, the art of explosive discipline born from post-war standardization, built on a karate foundation, but brilliantly marketed and adapted into a worldwide sport.
It's just a really striking example of how history gets shaped, isn't it? How national identity, politics, the need for a cultural symbol can literally rewrite, or at least heavily reframe, the story of a martial art.
It really is.
And maybe that leaves you, the listener, with something to think about. When you encounter any major cultural tradition, especially one claiming very ancient, unbroken roots, it's worth asking. How much of what we see today was actually shaped by more recent history? By the politics, the nationalism, the neighbors of the 20th century?
It just goes to show how powerful something as simple as a name can be in shaping perception in history.